Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA, where blue vans are driving around on campus and people are out strolling around between classes. It is 41 degrees Fahrenheit. No snow. Feels like spring. Kind of feel guilty, to be honest, compared to what many of you across the country and around the world are dealing with winter-wise. There's Shelf Cam, another shot of the blue van, backing up, boop, boop, boop. And I say hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. The local time is 2:47 p.m. Pacific time. And today's date is Thursday, January 29th of 2026. If you're watching this in replay, you can skip ahead 12 minutes. I mean, January 29th, we've essentially had zero snow the entire winter. So strange. So strange for here and for so many places. So thank you for tuning in. Let me say hi to a number of you. Wet my whistle, and we will connect. Huntsville, Ontario, Springfield, Oregon, Skyo, Oregon. Looking for some new locations. Randall, Washington, Hamden, Connecticut, Vienna, Austria. That's Richard. Hello. Washougal, Washington, Papaaloa, Hawaii. Hello. Georgia, USA, Boulder, Colorado, Edmonton, Alberta, Elko, Nevada. A shot of adrenaline. I mean it. I was foggy here a few minutes ago. This is so great to have you all here, and especially finding these exotic locations. Yokohama, Japan. Hello, Naoaki Oshi. Thank you for being our lone Japanese correspondent. It's plus 13 degrees Fahrenheit in Fairbanks, Alaska, everybody. Anthony's in France. Exmouth, UK, Ontario, Canada, Olympia, Washington. Heard of it? Glasgow, Scotland, Port Orchard, Washington, snowy Dayton, Ohio, where it's 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Spokane Valley, Washington, Point Roberts, Washington, Marion, Iowa, Edmonton, Alberta. Looking forward to the show. Thank you, Dale. So am I. Cincinnati, Ohio, Yuma, Arizona, Tonasket. That's Gail. Cooper is in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That's not far from Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, where I grew up. Ludwigsburg, Germany. Hello. Guten Tag. Good offen. What the frick? Göteborg, Sweden. Northborough, Massachusetts. Am I making this up, or are there a lot of new locations here? Unusual locations, or maybe I just always skip you by accident. I don't know. Orem, Utah. Earth. Pat the pilot from Natchez is not from Natchez any longer. He is from Earth. Teza is in sunny Hobart, Tasmania. Chico, California. Albany, Georgia. Quebec City, that's Luke, where it's minus 11 degrees centigrade. And Vincent is in Montreal, Canada. Mr. Kenna is in North Norway. Probably dark there. North London, England. Probably dark there. Petersburg, Alaska. I don't know. It's probably dark there. It's not dark here. It's now light in the sky here after 5 p.m. And that always feels like we're turning the corner here in central Washington. Guimas Island. Did I get that right? Adelaide, Australia. I heard from Holly Cook. I have booked another podcast episode to be a guest on the Wonder Geology podcast from Holly Cook and Anthony, can't remember, from Adelaide, Australia. Looking forward to that. That'll be recorded in late February. Yeah, one of these, I've got a bunch of stuff lined up for this spring and this summer. At some point, I should make some announcements. Yeah, it's approaching midnight in Norway. It's approaching midnight in many places. Google Earth by Glenn is here. Boulder Creek, California. I got no thank yous. I got nothing special to say. Eindhoven, the Netherlands. Garrett, the Dutch night owl from the Netherlands. Norley is in China. And I am just so blown away. I mean, she approached China from one of the stands, and it was about as remote as can be in one of the stands. And then she crosses this border into a very remote part of China. And here's this incredibly modern, clean, fancy city. Totally. I don't know what I thought of China, but I was just like, I can't believe this. So if you have not been watching Itchy Boots, the last few episodes, I think, are fascinating. Texas, Martinez, California. Listen, I have to say this just to get this off my chest. Insiders, what do we got? For more than 400 live viewers. Thank you for tuning in. I don't know if you've noticed. I've never commented until right now, but when I watch the replay, I'm 63 years old now. I don't know what's going on inside of my body, but there's weird noises that come out of my mouth. They're not burps necessarily. They're just kind of these weird door croaking kind of things. Like I just did it a couple seconds ago. And this mic is so good, it picks up all that stuff. I don't know. Have you ever noticed that? Now, of course, you're going to be listening for it. I probably shouldn't have said anything, but I find it hilarious and also impressive that this quality microphone can pick up these internal sounds. Weird. I don't know. Do I feel better for reporting that? I don't know. There, they're right there. What if I do this and see if this can be the little thumbnail thing? Have you noticed if you hover over a thumbnail? I only know that the live chat is ready to watch in replay because I can hover over the thumbnail of the recorded live stream, and there's some little animated little 1 second little thing from the episode. That's when I know the live chat is ready. Do you know what I'm talking about? And oftentimes it just grabs me doing this or something, but I'm wondering if I can get it to do this, even though we're not going to do that too much tomography today. Oh, this thing's all sticky now. Makes sense. Kermit the Frog noise. Yeah. Didn't hear a thing. No problem. Yeah. It's just, I suppose when people talk to me in person, they're like, "Wow, what? Guy doesn't even have control of his own body." And I don't, I guess, in that case, and it's only going to get worse. Okay, today's going to be wild. And I was feeling kind of not, yeah, you're right. I'm in a good mood, or I'm in a mood, Pat. Yeah, 15 minutes ago, I'm like, boy, I don't know if I'm even in the mood for this. It's like, ugh. Kind of like trepidation. And then you're all here, and suddenly I feel like there's a party. So thanks. Okay, I'm going to take my walk. Got 5 minutes. Spill some hot water on the keyboard. Nice move. Thank you so much for... Oh, no, I'm doing it on purpose. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's check out this guy walking by. See you in 5 minutes. Where is he? There you go, buddy. Gray sweats. What's in the shopping bag? I don't think I want to know. Unplug myself. Hot mic. Hot mic. A pleasant good afternoon to you all, and welcome back. Welcome to episode U of Alaska A to Z. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Bold open. Well, we have arrived. This is our destination. Today's topic, the Talkeetna Arc. If you've been with us the whole winter, and I think most of you have, you remember way back in early November when we started this series, I said, I don't know what the plan is. We're going to start with Hildebrand. We're going to zoom way out. We're going to try to find some narratives. We're going to eventually get ourselves to Alaska. Then we'll zoom back out. Then we'll zoom back in. Then we'll zoom back out. Then we'll zoom back in. We'll finally land on the Talkeetna Arc because the Talkeetna Arc is the centerpiece of the current National Science Foundation grant. I'm the outreach person on the grant. It's three guys from Purdue and me, Mike Eddy, Ken Ridgway, and Brandon Keogh. So a couple months from now, in mid-June of 2026, we're going to be up there, the four of us, and they're going to take me to the Talkeetna Arc. They're going to take me to the Chugach accretionary prism. They're going to take me to the Denali Fault. They're going to take me all over the place, and we're going to make, half a dozen videos, maybe more, showcasing their work. And by now, these alphabets, are built around a grant that I'm part of. When Michael Eddy from Purdue University was a brand new professor in 2019, he invited me to be the outreach person. First time any professor had ever done that with me. It's before I had a YouTube channel, by the way. He said, would you be the outreach person for the North Cascades Dream Team project? I said, sure, but I need to do my homework. So I did 3 alphabets, the exotic terrains A to Z, the crazy Eocene A to Z, and Baja BC A to Z, all to make sure that I was up to snuff on many of the concepts involving the North Cascades. Could I have just done a few videos involving their team and called it a day? Probably, but by now the die has been cast. The formula is there. I build alphabets around grants that I'm part of. Spirit Lake Pluton Project, also Mike Eddy, did the Cascades A to Z last year. And now the Talkeetna Arc project, we're finally there. So in a way, today is the beginning of the end. Because we only have 6 letters left, and we are to the Talkeetna Arc. I'm confused. I'm going to say that right up front. It's going to make me feel better. I'm confused. And so I'm going to be starting today with some rather straightforward, understandable index cards and narratives that we've already established, Brooks Range in other words. But I'm pretty quickly going to be getting into the Talkeetna Arc, the Bonanza Arc, comparing Vancouver Island, southern British Columbia geology with southern Alaska geology, with some flood basalts up there and some flood basalts down there. And then I'm going to get into the Chugach a little bit today. This one might be long, I don't know. But as this session goes on and on, I'm going to be less and less confident. I'm going to be asking more and more questions, and I'm going to be confused. I might even catch myself occasionally, like saying something and then showing the next slide and go, oh God, I'm caught. That doesn't work. But I'm giving myself 6 letters to come up with some narratives. This is the oldest part of the alphabet. We're talking about a 170 million year old collision, apparently. So one last thing, I'm still in the bold open. One last thing, we have been students together, graduate students essentially together, learning. And we've been learning a lot. And when you learn a hard subject, let's say, organic chemistry, and you've got your textbook on organic chemistry, and you're spending every night with that OChem book, right? You remember a hard class like that. And your goal is simply to get through the textbook, to learn the material. And the more time you spend with the textbook, doing problems, sketching stuff out, memorizing terms, everything, it's a whole new language and everything. It's a challenge, but you eventually can get to where you want to go by mastering the material if you spend enough time. For most of us, that's true. But if you're learning in a short amount of time, like we have been this winter, there's a lot. And I can just speak for myself, but maybe you can relate. There's moments of exhilaration. There's moments of frustration. There's moments where you're like, I can see this all beautifully. There's other moments like, have I learned anything this winter? Have I learned one thing? So this whole platter of emotions keeps happening because you're trying to learn a lot of new stuff. In my case, I'm trying to read a textbook on the Talkeetna Arc for today. But I read about the Talkeetna Arc with one textbook, chapter 7, let's say, and I'm like, I take all my notes. I got it all figured out. I know what I'm going to do with you guys. I get a blue Sharpie. I make a whole new collisional suite index card. And then I go to another book and I look up chapter 7 in the Talkeetna Arc, and it's a different author. And they're just as bold and they're just as convincing, and they're saying something totally different about the Talkeetna Arc. And then there's a third book, same subject, same chapter 7, it's different yet again. So I'm working with 3 books, 3 authors, 3 perspectives, and somehow not only trying to learn it, but then in addition to a student, I'm supposed to be the host, and I'm supposed to somehow deliver some kind of through line or some narrative. So my emotions are even more intense maybe than other times because I'm trying to do this juggling act between these different authors. So that's why it's going to get wild towards the end. I'm going to be talking about the Chugach in particular, and there's 3 distinctly different ways to view the Chugach. And you're just going to have to be okay that by the end of today, we're not going to have it all figured out. By Z, we should. At least I should have something settled. Okay, one last thing. I'm still in the frickin' bold open, 6-7 minutes into it. Another way to talk about today is I want to put everything out on the table, even my confusion out on the table, and get ready for Saturday morning. Less than 48 hours from now is episode V, Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific, here. And it's going to be a roundtable discussion with 3 geologists live. You know this, but I'm reminding you. Karin Siglock, Mike Eddy, and Trevor Waldine are all going to be here live together, 4 heads on screen. And I need you to tune in on Saturday morning. Can you do that? Can I count on you? Because I'm imagining 45 minutes of roundtable discussion with each of them having some slides to share with us and a discussion between the 3 of them involving many of the things that I'm about to talk about with the Talkeetna Arc and the Chugach. And then we're going to go to you. And we're going to have at least a half an hour of reading your questions directly for those 3 guests. And if we have 12 and a half people here on Saturday morning, it's not going to work. So, hope that you can be with us on Saturday morning. Less than 48 hours from now, episode V. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's go and let's go. I have 2 questions that I have told the guests that I would... Oh, what is going on here? I updated Keynote and I got a whole big problem. Okay, hang on. What do you... Shit, what am I doing? I updated Keynote like an idiot, and now I'm flying blind when I go full screen. This is going to shake me up. I have to do this. To get through today, I have to do this. Can I go 75? Wow. Okay. All right. So I checked in with each of our 3 live guests earlier this week, and they know the 2 main questions I would like to ask are the Talkeetna volcanic arc. Do you favor westward subduction of an oceanic plate to create the Talkeetna volcanic arc or eastward subduction? There's going to be difference of opinion on Saturday morning. And also that major bubblegum fault going across the state of Alaska, who agrees that that's a major fault that needs to go all the way through Alaska, and what are the implications of that major fault? Let's start with that. Oh boy. Okay. So here's a look at our, this hasn't already happened. I've just grabbed some screenshots from past interviews I've done with these 3 fine people. I'm going to be thanking them profusely on Saturday morning. I'm thanking them again right now. Trevor, Mike, and Karin, they're all busy. They all have agreed to be with us live, 8 a.m. Pacific this coming Saturday. Okay. I did it in this order because these are the time zones. Karin's going to be like Saturday night, Saturday approaching noon, and Saturday not far behind me or ahead of me. Porcupine Fault. You're like, I don't know what. So this is this what I'm coloring pink, the Porcupine Fault. I'm not even sure that's a published fault in any publication, but I want to discuss this, and our guests are going to chime in on whether they like this major fault or not. To me, I'm curious about, if you like this major fault like this, doesn't that mean that everything north of the pink line came from the Arctic? And everything above the pink line is tied to what we've established with the Buick hitting the Moose. And everything is unrelated, therefore, to any narratives we have today or from Bob's 70 million year old Tintina or the Selwyn Basin or whatever. Like, this seems to almost to be, is this too simple? Is everything like European in origin, or at least Arctic Ocean in origin, compared to Western North America in origin? Is that too dramatic? And if you're not a fan of this major line, then does that allow us to take something like the Koyukuk Arc and have it all be originally down here and then slide it north and fold it up? Docky. I'm reminding you that there's a talk tomorrow and a talk the following Friday at noon. I'm reminding you that here we are, and I would love to see many of you this coming Saturday. So this is from last time. And you remember I was asking innocently, which is normally the case with me, if we straighten this Koyukuk Arc out, do we have a lengthy volcanic arc that was once upon a time all the way down through here? And if we do have that, then I don't see how you can like this Porcupine Fault. I think everyone agrees Brooks and maybe down to this suture and maybe a little bit of this Koyukuk Arc right here has to be part of the Arctic story. But I think the question is how much of this southwestern Alaska thing can be tied to this versus this, and therefore that fault becomes a pretty major thing. Move on. I'm still thrown by my change here. God. Never update anything, okay? That's my message to you. What is happening? Calm down. Of course, the other main question is, if the Brooks Range is a westward subduction story, then why can't the Talkeetna, which is even older? And we're going to spend some time now with this. A quick review. Brooks Range, got it. We know where it is. Brooks Range. Everyone agrees. Remember, everyone agrees, including our three guests on Saturday morning. They agree that this is a westward subduction story, with the Angi-Yuchim ocean floor subducting westward beneath a fixed Koyukuk Arc. The Buick hitting the Moose. I'm going to try to keep myself under control here. Reminding ourselves, we move the Baltica continent, we approach the Moose, this continental crust tries to subduct beneath the Moose, it breaks off, we have pre-collision volcanic arc magmas. We have post-collision slab failure magmas, apparently, although I don't think people have looked carefully for that story. Glenn from Liberty Lake, Washington says, that's enough. I've seen too many comments about the GMC, so I got you an old red Buick. Congratulations. Here you go, Nick. Use this one instead of the other one. So there's a Buick literally hitting the Moose. Thanks, Glenn. Okay, we're still reviewing. You've watched the last few episodes. You're tired of this, and I think I am too. So we've established this. We know we have roughly a 135 million year old collisional hit, collision of North America, a continent colliding with the arc to create this scene. And we have 10 million years roughly of post-collisional features from the index card. But today, we're going down. We're going older. That's coming in a second. Quick, you've already done it. Quick, you've already done it. It's gray. This is the gray index card. We don't need it. This is an animation. God. Elena shows us when we collide and bring a continent approaching another thick piece of crust, we're going to try to subduct the continent. We're going to break the plate. We're going to have the ocean plate sink into the mantle. And then as soon as we pinch this thing off, we're going to uplift. It's been a while since we've talked about this. It's going to come up today. This post-collisional hinterland uplift, popping everything back to the surface, having sediment arrive in both places. Good, we can see it. Move on to new ground. So I wonder if anybody has looked carefully at the Koyukuk Arc and has looked at how old we go. When did that Koyukuk Arc begin? In other words, when did the subduction of the Anga-Yuchim ocean floor subduct? I think if you talk to Karen Siglock, she says we go back 180, maybe even a little bit older to 200 million years ago. Do we really have a field geology test of going back to 180 or 190 million year old arc magmas tied to this Koyukuk Arc? I'm not sure we do. The questions are going to be starting now. This we looked at for the first time last time, and I'm going to do it again because it now transitions us to today's topic. Here's the gray index card and the Brooks Range, and we did have ophiolite, right? We did have some green rocks in that suture. But now I'm slowing down because, my God, we are going weirdly outboard where as a rookie, I would think things would get younger and younger. Like, wouldn't this be the oldest collision inboard? And then we would get younger and younger as we keep piling things up. But no, our oldest collision of the winter is out here. And we're going blue. Docky. So, I'm coming back to the index cards. We've seen these over and over and over again, but it's been a few episodes since we've looked carefully at them. Remember our thrust faults of different ages, tied to hinterlands of different ages, tied to collisions of different ages. And so we had our coloring scheme, both in cross-section and in map. Wrong pile. Daddy's flustered. So, yes, collisions that we have all thought about this winter, mostly courtesy of Robert S. Hildebrand. Today I'm jumping down here for the first time. According to my sources, which I will share with you by email and interview and other things, I think the Talkeetna Volcanic Arc is a blue 170 million-year-old collision. Now, maybe Saturday morning, not everybody can agree on that. But I'm taking my cues, at least initially, from Robert S. Hildebrand. So, do we have index cards now written out for each of these colors? We do. Brown, our youngest. Green, going back in time. Red. Purple. Gray, which was the most recent set of episodes, the Brooks Range, in other words. And I just did this an hour ago. Blue. And we will be looking, at least partly today, for Bob's features. For Bob saying, look, every one of these collisions has all of these features, remember? Do you have blue thrust faults that are younger than 170? In other words, in this age range, if it's a 170 million year old hit between something and something else, we don't know what is what now, 170 to 153, we should have slab failure magmas, uplifted hinterland, thrust faults, sediment. And sediment over here too, because this uplifted mountain range is going to get eroded away post-collision. But before the collision, remember, Bob says there should be some volcanic arcs as we try to get rid of the ocean crust westward. Like this, right? Before we have the collision between the two quote-unquote bodies, we have a volcanic arc, and we've been thinking about westward subduction the whole way. Okay. So we're going to look for our blue index card down here, at least to start. 650 live viewers watching this guy try to progress through his slides and having trouble. Good. Thank you. I don't think I'm going to say anything about 160 and 153. That's eventually going to be covered, I think, before we quit the alphabet. For today, the number is 170, the darkest shade of blue. Here he is. It's been a while since we've seen him. I don't know if he's with us live either, but Bob is being brought back here into this series. And I've been sitting on some emails from Bob Hildebrand. You know, there's so much to read from Hildebrand. I doubt that you have made your way through every page of Hildebrand. I don't think anybody's made their way through every page of Hildebrand. I've tried, but I've come to rely on Bob Hildebrand's emails that are custom written for us. And I've been sitting on some I've had for a month, and I've been saving them for a day like today. We're going to bring them in now. Talkeetna Arc, Bob Hildebrand, lay it on us. Let's start basically, Nick. Well, do I have another one here? Rangelia is a dismembered composite superterrane. Okay, well, suddenly, so Talkeetna, well, let's do an index card. Let's get some words straight that are going to be used interchangeably, kind of, and even some colors, okay? So it's Talkeetna Arc for the next 20 minutes at least. Ready? Let me find my card before I... Oh, boy. Hang on, Patrick. So in past alphabets, and this is going back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were using the label insular superterrane. And quite often, insular superterrane showed up as orange on these animations and these maps. Well, the Alaskan geologists don't typically use that, I don't think. They use Rangelia composite terrain. As far as I can tell, it's the same thing. This is a bit of a roadmap for us. So in these emails and in these interviews clips that I'm about to share with you, there's talk of the peninsular terrain, the Alexander terrain, the Rangelia terrain, or the Wrangell terrain. And those three things together are known as the Rangelia composite terrain in southern Alaska, and I think that also works for the insular superterrane. And yes, there's a major slab wall in the lower mantle that ties to this, with westward subduction of the Mescalero Ocean. That's coming. But this is a bit of a roadmap for us. Since we are defining things, occasionally today and beyond, and maybe in our conversation, our roundtable on Saturday, there'll be talk of upper plate and lower plate. And I don't know if I've taken the time to really try to carefully define that for you, but the idea is that when you try to subduct a plate underneath another one, this is the lower plate and this is the upper plate. That's not so hard, right? But we have been thinking so much this winter about westward subduction, where the continent is being pulled under another continent or an oceanic island arc or something else. And so in many cases, with what we've done so far this winter and today, the lower plate is going to be this continent that's being pulled underneath and then eventually stops getting pulled underneath because we detach the oceanic portion of the plate. If you recall, this was the Baltica continent being pulled under the Koyukuk volcanic arc last couple of episodes, and this is the Angayushim ocean floor that's eventually going to sink all the way down to the lower mantle and become ribbon candy. Okay? Let's go now with Bob's Help. Wrangellia is a dismembered composite superterrane located in westernmost Canada and southern Alaska. It's generally considered to contain three terranes: Alexander, Wrangell, and Peninsular. Wrangell terrain is dominated by 230 to 225 million-year-old flood basalts, known collectively as the Carmoutzen Formation on Vancouver Island and the Queen Charlotte Island, where 6 kilometers of high titanium basalt and piccrites, pillows, and hyaloclastites with uppermost subaerial lavas are well preserved, and the Nikolai Formation in Alaska and Yukon Territory, where up to 3.5 kilometers of dominantly subaerial high titanium basalts with basal high titanium pillow basalts are preserved. The platformal sedimentary rocks atop the basalts are best interpreted as a passive margin succession on Wrangell terrain. Previous workers did not recognize these rocks as lower plate during the collision, so had the subduction polarity reversed. Subduction polarity is, do you like westward or eastward? You know that we're in Alaska, and you know that when we hear southward, that really means westward for us. And if we mean northward, that means eastward to us. I know that sounds confusing. You might pause that and replay that a couple more times. But we're undoing the orocline just to keep the westward and eastward stuff straight. Okay? So Bob's setting the stage with Wrangellia. And he's talking about Vancouver Island and southern Alaska in the same breath. Why is he doing that? I have a document that helps. Maybe the best help I have for you today. Let's slow down and look at this one. I like this one. I hope it's correct, but I like it. You see my confidence starting to flag a little bit. Southern Alaska, Vancouver Island. To my shock, the Talkeetna Arc has an evil twin in southern British Columbia known as the Bonanza Arc. Well, hell, I know about the Bonanza Arc. I was just up on Vancouver Island twice last summer, scouting for some PBS episodes and then filming 2 PBS episodes with Backcountry Gary Paul and Jerome Lessman and Brady Lawrence, the camera guy, after Labor Day. And we were talking and featuring in those 2 episodes of Nick on the Rocks that just came out with the red shirt on Vancouver Island. Sicker, Carmoutzen, Nanaimo, Quatsino, Vancouver Island bedrock geology. Well, you remember way back at the beginning of the alphabet, I was hoping, but I wasn't sure, that Alaska was not going to be Serbian geology. Alaska was going to be geology that had a bunch of old friends. A bunch of things that were down here originally are now up there. In other words, Alaska was going to have some geology that had different names, but it was actually the same frickin' stuff as what I'm familiar with within a day's drive of Ellensburg. Well, here we go. Here we go. A major portion of southern Alaska bedrock geology is exactly the same, as far as I can tell, as the bedrock geology of Vancouver Island, which is essentially home. So, Talkeetna Arc, same as the Bonanza Arc. What do I mean the same? Well, they're volcanic arc magmas between 215-ish up to 153-ish. That's old, right? Compared to other stuff. Those 2 volcanic arcs are sitting on top of some limestones. We did the Quadra Island episode where we featured some beautifully folded Quatsino limestone. I'm not sure if there are limestones up here that the Talkeetna Arc are sitting on top of, but maybe there were originally. What I do know exists in spades up in Alaska are flood basalts between 232 and 225, known as the Nikolai flood basalts. Okay, same stuff down in Vancouver Island, Jerome Lessman's house, Carmoutzen basalts, roughly the same age. And those flood basalts in both places sit on top of Paleozoic oceanic island arc rocks. up in southern Alaska, older than 300 million years ago, known as the Scolai Arc. And again, Vancouver Island, the Sicker rocks, older than 300 million. So this story is so beautiful and so simple, and yet these two places are separate from each other now. I don't think I want to go to talking about which fault took this half of the story and sent it north, because that doesn't seem to be something that's easy for people's minds. So I think we're just going to kind of leave that one. We may pick up the talk. Maybe Trevor will want to talk about that on Saturday morning. But instead, I want to go back to Bob's emails, and we're going to get more detail now. And suddenly you'll start to get to the 3-book conversation where I'm starting to get really confused. I just did that. Thank you, Nick. The Talkeetna Arc. This thing, right? The Talkeetna Arc is exposed over a strike length of over 1,000 kilometers within the peninsular terrain of the Wrangellia superterrane. The main phase of the Talkeetna Arc magmatism occurred from 202 to 175, and plutons intruded the northern part of the area between 190 and 153. Thank you, Bob, for all this custom set of words for us. In the west, on Kodiak Island, and in the Alaska Peninsula, the Jurassic batholith yielded ages of 213 on Kodiak to 184 to 164 on the Alaska Peninsula. To the north of the Talkeetna Arc are south-dipping thrust faults that developed in consort with a clastic basin, which sits unconformably upon platformal rocks and coursens upward from marine mudstones and sandstones to conglomerate. This basin is generally considered to represent a back arc basin to the Talkeetna Arc. But given that the volcanic arc, the Talkeetna Arc, appears to have been thrust upon the carbonate platform, I suggested in my 2013 paper that the basin might instead have developed as a typical 4-deep built atop the passive margin on the Wrangell terrain and formed as a response to the foreland folding and thrusting during the 170 million-year-old collision between the Talkeetna Arc and the Wrangell terrain. Collide the Talkeetna Arc with the Wrangell terrain. I'm starting to get confused. I tried to draw something out, though. Would you like to see it? Please say yes. We know this now. We're talking about the peninsular. How can I have lost this already? Oh, come on. I have to have it. Hang on. I'm really sorry. Did I not bring it? Here. Jeez. A 170 million-year-old hit of the Talkeetna Arc with the Wrangell terrain. Bob is saying this is out in the water. This is not a collision with North America. This is just getting these two guys together out in the Pacific somewhere. And the Talkeetna Arc, therefore, should have magmas that are older than 170 million years old. And there should be some features that are younger than 170 million years old that are post-collisional. And I guess there should be some green rocks in the suture between these two things. So it's getting hairy, isn't it? It's getting hairy because this is earlier than many of our other narratives this is for the first time we're colliding something way away from North America, I guess, and we're kind of constructing the insular superterrane. This is back when we're trying to have a party in the Pacific and get some of these fragments together. And that's tough for me because I don't know what's fixed. We're back 170 million years ago. We're just in the earliest stages of starting the slab walls, I think. So now I'm not even sure how we deal with Karin stuff, but that's why I have these folks on. Let's go back to Bob's email and see if we can make more sense of it. A 170 million year old collision between the Talkeetna Arc and the Wrangell terrane. The emplacement of the arc upon Wrangellia explains why there are no older than 170 million year old plutons cutting Wrangellia. There's no magmas older than 170 cutting Wrangellia, but we're going to kill the Talkeetna Arc at 170, I think. Which brings up an interesting point. Is it possible, with these video clips we're about to see with talking to Brandon Keogh, is it possible some of the stuff that Brandon and others assume are younger batches of Talkeetna Arc magmas, is it possible those are post-collisional slab failure magmas? We're getting into the different authors now of the different books. Hang in there. Let's keep going. Talking to myself and you, I think. The extreme tectonic thinning of the volcanic arc from nearly 30 kilometers thick to 7 kilometers thick within the 10 million years of collision, as deduced from thermobarometry and argon dating, and the northward younging of the Arctic arc magmatism. A pluton dated at 153 cuts the peninsular and Wrangellia contact and has slab failure compositions. So Bob is saying we do have at least one a post-collisional slab failure magmas, and that's why I chose 153 for the end of this post-collisional window. But we're trying to put this together. Have I made significant errors already trying to paraphrase Bob's work? Probably, but let's continue. Let's continue. You remember this one from before Christmas, I think. Here's how I see it these days, as confusing as it might be to you and your viewers. There were at least 3 volcanic arcs that collided with the western. Now we're down in California. 170, 160, 153, pertaining to today. The leading edge of Wrangellia was partially pulled beneath the Talkeetna Arc, close to 170. On the south side of the Talkeetna-Wrangellia collision zone, coarse 167 to 150 million-year-old batholithic debris of the Naknek Formation was shed southward from the hinterland belt as it was exhumed on north-dipping reverse faults, which supports a 170 million-year-old age for the event. The Talkeetna could represent parts of the 170 million-year-old accretion of the Slate Creek Combi Arc in the western Sierra Block. So you see what I mean? We need 6 letters to try to tie these things together. We're going to California. We're going to the Sierra Nevada, the Native Arc, all that Jurassic stuff, courtesy of Mitch Mahalanuck and some other folks. But we can't do that today. We got our hands full. So please stay with me. I'm going to try to bring this in a little bit. But we got that deep with Bob to realize that there's some major narratives from his point of view. And I want to give you a sampler for what other points of view are going to feel like and sound like. Here's still Bob, though, before we move on to somebody else. So Bob says, if you look at the history of the Wrangell terrane, it appears to have been involved in 4 collisions. 302 million years ago, where you get Alexander to combine with Wrangellia. 170 million years ago, that's today's topic, where you combine the peninsular terrane with the Talkeetna terrane to form the Wrangellian superterrane. 100 million years ago, remember, that's a big hit that Bob has from Alaska down to the south tip of South America, where you get this insular and collide it with the Yukon. In other words, insular combining with intermontane, or you get Rangelia and friends to collide with intermontane. And finally, Bob's got his Rangelia story also with the 85-million-year-old hit. The first two of these collisions occurred offshore. The 100-million-year-old formed during closure of a basin which opened about 140. Yeah, that's the business about taking part of the basement out and then bringing it back in. Okay, thank you, Hildebrand. Let's move on. So let's move to a different group, a different book, and Brandon is part of the Purdue team. This is the first time we've heard from Brandon himself, a PhD student under Ken Ridgway and Mike Eddy's tutelage, mentoring, and Brandon is going to be a key part this winter. Brandon. Well, I'm gonna throw something here at Keynote. Good God. Can I not move on? Okay, I'm going full screen.
So the peninsular terrain on this map is this blue here, Rangelia's purple, and Alexander's pink. And then I'm also showing the Chugach accretionary complex here. But the peninsular terrain, these stars are basically showing the distribution of magmatic rocks for the Talkeetna Arc. And, you see most of them are on the peninsular terrain. They kind of butt up against the contact with the Rangelia terrain in south central Alaska. And then also parts of, I know Sarah Rusky talked about the relationship between the Talkeetna and what's called the Bonanza Arc down here, but they're very much thought to be a formerly connected arc. And so the Bonanza component of that is built on the southern portion of the Rangelia terrain.
Okay, I was very excited with that whenever we did this interview. I'm flying blind right now, by the way. I can't see my windows, but I assume you can hear this. I am seeing a couple 5x5s in another monitor. Let's continue, and then I'll get out of this when I get done with these video clips. We got 4 clips from Brandon. He's excellent, and he's laying this out. But I chose to do Bob's radical stuff first so that you can hear this more conventional version and see how these two different points of view might work together on Saturday morning.
The pink bodies here, these are all plutons associated with the arc. Okay. So out here we would be on the peninsular terrain. They're on the previous terrain, simple terrain map I showed with the stars. I showed one set of stars that were showing a little bit older ages, and those would basically be all on this more outboard trend. So the oldest ages, like I mentioned, are on the Afognak batholith out on the Kodiak archipelago here, about let's say 215. I have some younger ones around 206 now from the northeastern end. And then up in the Chugach Mountains, these plutons range from about 201 to 180 or so. And then at about 180, the arc is shifted inboard. So on the Alaska Peninsula, these plutons, these range from about 180, some a little bit older, and then up into the Talkeetna Mountains, getting as young as about 153.
I just wonder if those are slab failure. Those are post-collisional, according to Bob. Are we sure those are still arcs when we jump inboard and get younger?
I'm also showing in here, this would over here be part of the Rangelia terrain. You can see these younger plutons come right up against this geology, but the darker purple is the Nikolai flood basalts that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And then the blue is some of the Paleozoic arc-related crust.
He's good. Let's keep going. 2 more.
You mentioned the Sicker group and the Sicker arc in the basement of Vancouver Island geology. That's important because that was part of a Paleozoic arc system that essentially defines most of Rangelia. And it was for a while kind of unclear if the peninsular terrain was part of that or if it existed, during that arc time. There's some data. One really pertinent study has shown that really part of the peninsular terrain basement probably also contains at least bits and pieces of that Paleozoic arc. So starting in the beginning, that's like really the first connection I would make thinking about Rangelia Peninsular, that they probably had this Paleozoic history that extends a little bit into the peninsular terrain, at least in bits and pieces. And then you mentioned the Karmutsin flood basalts on Vancouver Island. Those are a southern equivalent to the Nikolai flood basalts in south central Alaska. So they're basically time equivalent units, these flood basalts that define the Wrangellia terrain either in the north or the south. And yeah, they erupted between about 230 to 225 MA. And
Wow.
then the arc, the Bonanza Arc portion, so the portion on Vancouver Island, I believe starts around 210 MA. And what I think is really important about the Vancouver perspective on this, Vancouver Island perspective, is that there it's really clear that the arc was built on the basalts and on the Sicker Group basement, which is really important. When we go up to Alaska, that's always been less clear because the peninsular terrain basement is almost entirely not exposed, just in a couple places, one of them being the place we went and worked in the Alaska Peninsula 2 years ago. But also we have these flood basalts on Wrangellia in south central Alaska, and then it's been a little bit unclear, do those extend in other places? And we have similar age basalts that haven't been studied too much in the peninsular terrain, and that's been a big focus of our study because out on the Kodiak Archipelago, we've been working on basalts that we didn't actually really know the age of. We knew they were probably late Triassic, but we didn't know the age of them. And we've been able to show that they're actually a little bit just slightly older than the flood basalts on Wrangellia as far as we know those age relationships. They're about 232 and a little bit older, but we're relating those basalts and the eruption of those to the initiation of the Talkeetna Arc. So now we have a relationship where we'd say that, the timing of these basalts and then the building of the arc on all of this basement is basically a more coherent story that we're starting to put together.
I love how he does this, and I normally interject between video clips to give some context, but because I'm flying blind, I'm going to do one more by myself, and then we'll go to Docky and I'll try to translate what I think I'm hearing from Brandon. But this is the meat and potatoes that we want to work with today.
We basically had constraints like what are the oldest magmatic rocks. That's why we went to the Kodiak Archipelago, or it's one reason. The oldest magmatic rocks associated with the arc are out there, and that's part of what's called the Afognak batholith. And some of the oldest ages were between about 212 and 217, so a little early to mid-Norian, basically. What we went out there to do, our main hypothesis was that on the archipelago, the Afognak batholith intrudes this basaltic crust. So we can see that the oldest magmatic products intruded this crust. And as I mentioned before, there wasn't age control for the basalts out there. Those are called the Lower Shuyak Formation. But our hypothesis was that, in many places on Earth, including, for example, the West Pacific arcs, where there's been a lot of IODP drilling and things like that to study crust that forms during subduction initiation, what happens is you get a slab sinking and rolling back. And in the upper plate there, you get extension and the eruption of basalts that basically through geochemistry, you can see it begins much like a mid-ocean ridge because you just have decompression melting and spreading in the upper plate. But then as the slab gets deep enough, you actually start to see fluids coming off of the slab and the geochemical signature of that. So we've been testing that hypothesis. I think that's very much turned out to be the case, that is how those basalts were created. And we've been able to date that sequence, and that was an age of 232 MA. And so that gives us the initiation story now back into the Carnian, which is an older, time frame to be talking about initiation of the Talkeetna Arc than in most other cases.
Okay, Brandon Keogh, you're going to hear a lot from him this summer with the videos that we make up there in Alaska together. How are we doing? Like it's 10 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm going to run long today, in part because I've got this clumsy new thing with an updated keynote. I need to get back to the old keynote next time I see you. This is just too wild for me, speaking of wild. But I want to go to Docky and try to translate what I think I just heard. In fact, I want to do it verbally first. I think Brandon just said that the flood basalts that are today on Vancouver Island and up in southern Alaska, that the Talkeetna Arc and Bonanza volcanic arcs are built upon, are the result of the initiation of the subducting plate. I think that's what he said. Is that a different answer than a hotspot-generated flood basalt story? This grant that I'm part of, and we'll check in with Mike. Hey, Mike, you're watching this one before Saturday morning. Can we talk about that a little bit? Are you really saying that the initiation of an ocean plate to start the Talkeetna Arc is generating the basalt because we're extending, we're pulling the crust apart as this plate is sinking, trying to get set up with the subducting scene? And then you start building the arc on top of the flood basalts? Like, are the flood basalts really the first stage of a subduction zone? That seems radical to me, Mike. Is that what you and Brandon and Ken are saying? If not, I just misheard. But to me, they're starting the subduction story of the Talkeetna Arc at 232 because that's when we start releasing all this flood basalt into these two places that are now separated by thousands of kilometers, or at least hundreds of kilometers. Okay, how are we going to get through the rest of this stuff? Can we go back to this setting? Can I advance? I don't want to fly blind the rest of the time, but I guess I need to. Somehow I got out of... Jesus Christ. Go blind.
We basically...
Okay, we switch to Karin Siglock. And Karin is going to put a different spin on this. What kind of common ground can we find on Saturday morning with the Talkeetna Arc?
Talkeetna, which we put here as I showed you, is built, is insular essentially.
Yes.
And so it has to be along the slab where all of insular is.
Okay.
And that is shown in a rougher, rendering like this. So this is again this Mescalera slab. This is the Angayuchum slab.
Okay.
170 million years. Insula must have been here.
Okay.
So things work out in Guerrero here.
Mm-hmm.
So now this collision sequence. So North America collides here in the Nevadan orogeny around 155.
I assume we're 5 by 5, and I'm going to stop. Not the only good thing about being blind is I've got an easy way to get to stopping and starting these video clips. So I'm pausing Karin right now, and I think she's saying that North America is starting to deal with the Talkeetna Arc at 150, and that's different than our 170 million year old hit. Remember, the 170 million year old hit, I think, is between Rangelia and the Talkeetna Arc, two separate things to build the insular superterrane. But now we bring in our buddy us, North America, at 150, another one of the blue collisions, apparently.
So in a very specific point, but Talkeetna will have felt it as one of the first things to Mexico or so, and starts pushing this microcontinent ahead. So also a microcontinent. Because North America rides into the archipelago. And what's happening here now, there was some oceanic lithosphere just peacefully not doing anything.
Okay, suddenly we have to start dealing with these two other things that I've avoided to this point. Do you remember? We had a Farallon slab that was just as deep as the Mescalera slab and the Angayuchum slab. We've got an ocean slab that is all the way down in the base of the mantle. It's got 180 million years of history, and I have not known what to do with it, but we're going to have to be faced with that as we get into the Chugach right here at the end.
But that's now being pushed, and what it does is it starts to subduct under, eastward, to get out of the way. So that's the Farallon subduction, southern Farallon subduction, and this continues. So now we still have Farallon subduction. So that's, for example, the Sierra Nevada batholith arc stage. But then in this...
Okay, I'm going to cut her off here because she's getting into Baja BC. I'm saving all the Baja BC part of this for next week. But here we are at 170. Can I get my pointer on the freaking screen now? God. Here's 170. And there's our red pickle, separate, right? Then this, here's the Talkeetna at the head of the whale. Here is Mount Stewart at the tail of the whale. This is the other slab. This is the insular slab. and not the Angiyuchim slab that's down there with westward subduction from Karin Siglock's work. I truly am going to explode here. Is that allowed?
Yes. The practical thing, if you have a real collision, is that typically something really gets trapped, and you see it when it's an accretionary complex, like the Chugach subduction complex in Alaska, so a Farallon complex, or in the Franciscan here.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're not always preserved.
Okay.
I see an example of that.
Sure.
So because it doesn't get trapped between two quasi-continental fragments.
Okay, you're going to have to keep me in line here, because I feel like I want to go about 17 different directions now, but I think we're billing this as Alaska tectonics. So maybe let's start there. But I as we've been doing the whole winter, Karin, we can't just talk about Alaska. There's implications all over the place. But
yes. And, starting like this for Alaska makes sense, because if you look at this, all of them are represented there.
Jeez, look at that. Yes.
They're really all coming together, and that's the and they haven't been there for very long, right? Before 18 million years or so, they presumably in place there.
Oh boy! All right, taste the rainbow. Yeah, let's go. Okay, so
taste the rainbow. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Skittles, I love you. All right. I'm going to call an audible right here. It's essentially the top of the hour. And now that I have you back and I'm not blind any longer, I want to use Daki. I want to try to regroup for myself and maybe some of you, and just tease the Chugach. I don't know if the Chugach is going to be coming up. We probably have plenty for us to discuss on Saturday morning without dealing with the Chugach a lot. But I had another 20 minutes on the Chugach ready to go, but that's going to wait because I need to figure out what the hell's going on. We got 2 texts from Bob as well. So give me 5 more minutes to just try to synthesize what we've been doing with this mad scramble. And then when we touch on the Chugach a bit, then we'll go to Bob's texts. Then we'll go to your questions. Okay? I hate being out of control like this, where I'm not in charge of what's going on with the technology, but just sharing that out loud hopefully helped. So what have we tried to do today? Daddy's going to try to reel this back in. We have, I think, talked about evidence for a lower plate subducting beneath an upper plate. And in the case of our blue collision today, our lower plate is one feature that's out in the water, trying to subduct beneath another feature out in the water. And the beginnings of the collision is 170 million years ago. What are those 2 features? As I think I understand it, 2 portions of what we now know as the insular superterrane. The Wrangell terrain trying to subduct beneath the Talkeetna oceanic arc. Now, is there an older history beneath this arc? Yeah, apparently there is. Because remember, the Talkeetna Arc is Paleozoic basement, the Skolai volcanic arc. God knows what trench and what setup was there. I don't think we have tomography from more than 300 million years ago to pinpoint that. But then our flood basalts come on top of that, then some platformal sedimentary rocks, I guess, or maybe some coral reefs, and then here's the Talkeetna Arc. So there's quite a history already with what is underneath the Talkeetna Arc. But the 170 comes in when we realize that Wrangellia is hitting this thing and trying to subduct beneath it, according to Bob. Now, that's a westward subduction story. Geologists who are going to be with us on Saturday morning, I don't know, can you play with what I'm doing right now? I'm quite confident that Karin is going to like the westward subduction to create the Talkeetna Arc, because the Talkeetna Arc is on the insular superterrane. and she likes the Mescalero Ocean subducting westward. I'm also quite confident that the two young bucks on Saturday morning, Trevor and Mike, are going to like eastward subduction. We're not going to have a food fight on Saturday. We're going to look for common ground and listen and go back and forth. But I don't know. How might this cartoon be different? And Bob's a whole nother book, and maybe neither group likes what Bob is saying here. And perhaps Bob doesn't like what I'm saying here if he's watching live. Okay, the Chugach thing. So if I can get, God, can I try this? I'm just going to go ahead one and then get out of it again. Is that allowed? There. Now get back out. Okay. So this is Karin and Mitch Mahalanuk. And this is where we need the final 6 letters to do some thinking about this. But when we start talking about the Chugach accretionary prism, or the Chugach accretionary wedge, or the Chugach subduction complex, there's 3 books with 3 authors, and all 3 authors view the Chugach differently. And that implies there's different choices about eastward and westward. And can you pair the Chugach sediments with the Talkeetna Arc? This is my last attempt. Get rid of everything else. The conventional story from probably Mike and Trevor is that we have eastward subduction feeding the creation of the Talkeetna Arc. I don't know if we're out in the water or not, but I think that the conventional story is this Chugach subduction complex, this whack, this flish, that's molasse, I don't know, all those words, just basically accretionary stuff, is paired with the Talkeetna Arc. And that was a point made rather strongly by Terry Pavlis and the rest in that 2019 paper, which waits for you at nickzentner.com. If you listen to Karin, she agrees that the Chugach is from eastward subduction, but she does not agree that a majority of the Chugach accretionary wedge is tied to the formation of the Talkeetna Arc, because the age of this stuff is so different than the age of when we were building the Talkeetna Arc. And so she likes westward subduction of a different accretionary prism, I think, building the Talkeetna, and then this is a younger story. And in fact, she likes this as being an accretionary prism out here. So she and Mitch Mahalanuk have 2 different eastward subducting trenches, each of them having their own accretionary wedge. And I think I'm hearing that she's liking most of the Chugach to be out here, subduction to make this Farallon volcanic arc, and then eventually this stuff is going to be plastered on to what is today's Talkeetna Arc. Don't ask me for details at this point, but I will try to get some detail and some razor-sharp clarity for you and for all of us by letter Z. I think this is the Sierra. So the Franciscan complex and the Chugach complex, according to Karin and Mitch, are both eastward, not westward, but not in the neighborhood of Insular at the time that much of the Chugach was being created. Confusing for you? Yeah, me too. It's well reasoned. I know there's some there. To be honest, I don't think most geologists totally understand what Karin is saying. So that's the challenge for all of us. And there's some emails directly from Karin that's going to have to wait. It's too much to tack on here today. But there's a 3rd book with a 3rd author. And instead of the Chugach from eastward subduction, pairing it with the Talkeetna. That's most everybody, including, I think, Mike and Trevor. And also different than Karn and Mitch, saying that Chugach is from way the hell out there in the water and just happens to be finding itself next to the Talkeetna Arc today, but there's no real connection between most of the Chugach and the Talkeetna. That's Karn and Mitch. Bob Hildebrand says he doesn't think that Chugach is an accretionary prism at all, and that this is the blue index card, and that we have sediment being deposited after the collision that's accumulating in a much different manner. And Bob has way more to say about the Chugach and the McHugh and blue schists that are hidden in the Chugach. So much to my shock is that I think the Chugach, which I thought was just conventional for everybody, has just as many secrets in it as the Franciscan complex does in California. I'm not saying they're exactly the same thing, I guess, but maybe I am. And I did an interview with Dawa and Daryl Cowan and others about the Franciscan. So that's where we're going loosely. But can you see the confusion in my eyes? It doesn't feel great to lay this out in such a scattered way, but I feel like it's enough to get us some raw materials out on the table so that we can have a vibrant, rich, and hopefully fun and exciting live conversation on Saturday morning. Okay, let's see if I do have two texts from Bob or if it's not. It's somebody else. Oh, God, can I not find my texts here? No, it's from Jerome. Okay. All right, so Bob's not with us. Fine. Thank you. Uppercase for you. God, do I play with this one more time? I'm excited by this, and most of them excited because I still don't have it. I can't stop. I'm going to try one more thing. Oh, hey, give me 5 minutes. We're going to do some Glenn quick. Come on, we got to do some Glenn. Let's go. I'm going to go blind with Glenn. Here. Glenn Cruikshank. Slideshow. Before we go to your live questions. Reload. Please work. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Glenn, let's enjoy 21 slides from Glenn from Liberty Lake, Washington. Glenn's got his hands on some historic photos taken in Alaska back in the 1930s by Mary Kelly. And Mary Kelly is the daughter of famous geologist I just read somebody in the live chat, sorry. Famous geologist Joseph Pardee. So let's do this. Is this not working? We're going into Juneau. Let me go back. I think I missed one of Glenn's things. I did. Okay, let's try this again. Take two. Glenn, thank you. Into Ketchikan, Alaska. Zooming in on Google Earth by Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. That's fun. Now let's look at a historic photo taken by Joseph Pardee's daughter, Mary, back in the 1930s. Wow, nice. I'm going to go back. Very fun. Thank you, Glenn. I'm glad we did that over. Now we zoom back out. I assume we're 5x5 viewers. I can see the live chat for the first time in a long time. Into Juneau, state capital, I do believe. Another photo by Mary, 1937. up to Keystone Canyon. Oh, she got around. Up the Richardson Highway. I do love historic photos, and I know that many of you do too. Oh, going into Fairbanks to the train station. Nice. Oh, wow. Well, that does look like Joseph himself. Oh, it is. Joseph and his wife Ruby, and Mary is maybe the granddaughter? Or is Mary the daughter? Oh, I'm confused. Wow, cool. That's a great photo of Mary. I assume it's Mary. How'd you get these photos, Glenn? Is this from one of those museums? Muncho Lake. Okay, so viewers, I'm going to come right back to that. One of the viewers' names is Letitia, and she goes by Alberta Letty. And Letitia, about 3 weeks ago, emailed me and said, I've got a song that goes with Bob Hildebrand's work. And I watched it, and there was a little video going along with it, and I enjoyed it, and I thought she wrote it, and it was very complimentary. I said, I'll definitely play that. And then she shared with me that it was written by AI, essentially. She put a bunch of stuff into AI, but it created this song. And then a couple episodes ago, I showed to Nick on the Rocks here, and I got copyright strikes. And so now I'm very gun shy to show anything. And Nat the Wonder Boy has advised me never to play anybody as others' video on this channel, or I'm going to get more copyright strikes, and there might even be problems with the future of this channel. So I apologized to Letty. She took the time to make different versions of this song, and it's in the description down below. So I'm not going to play it. I wanted to play it. I even had her make a special lyrics version of the song so that we could all watch the words go by. It's customized for the Hildebrand stuff, 1,300 kilometers north and all that stuff. So anyway, Glenn has taken some of Letty's photos that she sent to me, taken just a few days ago, and I've put them in the slideshow, but I'm letting you know that you will enjoy, I hope, not only this Google Earth by Glenn link, which is, I always put Glenn's link in the description below, but Alberta Letty's song. I think you'll enjoy that as well. Thank you. So this is what things look like just a few days ago up in Yukon or maybe Alaska. Maybe Glenn's going to take us there. Or maybe he just did take us there. I think he just did. Muncho Lake. Yeah, he just did. There. Yeah, and there's the title photo of her video, which is the song. Back at Burwash Landing. Nice. Buried fault line video. Thank you so much. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Letty. Okay, viewers, thank you for hanging in there. It's approaching a quarter after the top of the hour. Uppercase for some live questions. This was a wild one, wilder than I wanted, mostly because I was struggling. I was just blind the whole time. So I need to go back to the old version of Keynote for Saturday morning because that upgraded version it was not a good surprise for me. Hopefully it worked for you. So please, if you haven't typed in your question yet, please do so now. TMP, is North America moving/riding west via or into the Mescalera subduction zone? Thank you. Yes, that's the idea that if you have westward subduction of the Mescalera Ocean, that means to the west of the Mescalera Ocean is a continent, and it's us. So it's similar to what we did with the Brooks Range, with the Buick coming down the highway. The Buick is now us coming down the highway, being pulled by the Mescalero Ocean Basin. Patrick, do we know if the bubblegum fault is just one fault? How many quills of the porcupine does it take to fold the Koyukuk Arc? Very creative question, Patrick. Thank you. I'm hoping Trevor and maybe everyone can comment on what they think about the Koyukuk, about the porcupine fault. That seems to be a big topic, at least from my brain. So I would like to, that's one of the two main questions for Saturday morning. Bruce, is there enough high resolution in the tomography to see the building of Insular 170 million years ago? Could it account for the abnormal slab width Bob has mentioned? Good question, Bruce. Karen has been keeping up with these episodes. She's been staying up till like 2 a.m. in France to watch interviews and then email me some comments. And I didn't have time to include some of those emails today. I'll be interested in seeing what Karen has to say, but she will watch this, read all of your questions, and probably come up with a few things tailor-made to what you're asking. I don't know the answer. Kevin, any thoughts regarding the Western Melange Belt in Alaska related to Chugach subduction complex? Thank you, Kevin. I finally got a bit of a handle on the Western Melange Belt in Washington State last winter. And now I'm starting to wonder, can we do something with the Western Melange Belt in Washington and look for friends up in Alaska? If we can do that with the Vancouver Island bedrock and South Alaska bedrock, why couldn't we do it with the Western Melange Belt as well? I think that's what you're asking. Donna, how far down have slab walls gone? Have any reached the Earth's core? Thank you, Donna. I believe we have only been able to find the slabs down to the lowest part of the mantle, which is down about 2,000 kilometers depth, but no deeper than that. I think it's the resolution that's the issue. Maybe there are more slabs deeper than 2,000 kilometers. And if there's an interesting, if you use that steady slab sinking rate that Karen uses, if you have a slab that's 1,000 kilometers deep, that's representing 100 million years ago when that slab was on the surface. 2,000 kilometers deep, 200 million years ago it was at the surface. So these collisions at 170 million years ago, for instance, we would look for slabs that are 1,700 kilometers below the surface. Moo Cow Donkey. Karen has a slide with her story of Talkeetna, but it went by fast. Did she say anything about the polarity for Wrangellia-Talkeetna collision? I think she talks about polarity of the North American collision. Should we go back to that? Should I fight through my blindness here to finish with that? I think we probably should. Why not? Let's tie it in there. Thank you. I'll watch the replay and see all of your live questions. I'm seeing plenty of questions about Karen's work, and you wanted to go back. I'm in control of this at the moment, I think. God. Here. Is it this one that you wanted to see? I'll let you freeze this and look at it, but let me skip ahead to a couple of Karen's emails about the Chugach. Why not? I've got you here. Let's just do a bit more. I think I'm in control. I'm going to skip Bob's comments. I'm going to skip Cam's. We're going to use this, but I want to skip down to Karen's stuff. So here's what I think I understand currently. Give me a few more letters. But I think Karen and Mitch, this is Karen and Mitch's figure, they want this green and this green. Well, this is Western Melange. Come on, here we go. They like green as eastward subduction, but most of it quite a ways offshore. And then orange is insular. Blue are all these green rocks. Now I would want to make those green between insular and intermontane. But let's get to a couple more slides that can't. Oh boy, here's where I have my problem. So this is, I'm cutting this short, but this is, I think, turning out to be a very key thing, especially the McHugh stuff. That's a bunch of, I think, blue schist material that's caught. And it's getting harder and harder for some groups to tie the Chugach with the Talkeetna because there's 3 different stories just within the Chugach and the McHugh. And none of those appear to be the same age as the Talkeetna, if I'm understanding correctly. Oh. Is the Chugach forming mostly out here? All these green trenches are eastward subduction from Karn and Mitch. Are we doing a bunch of Chugach accumulation way the hell out here before it ends up close to the Talkeetna? Is the Chugach forming mostly out here? This is a cleaned up version of what you were asking for, I think, whatever your name was. Moo Cow Donkey. Talkeetna, Coast Plutonic Complex. And then this is getting this stuff up to where it belongs. But that's the least of our concerns right now. I just showed that so you could kind of freeze frame those. Okay, let me go down to live. Look for 3 more questions and we'll call it a day. John Nash, what were the latitudes during northern Alaska collisions? The northern Alaska collisions, if you're asking about the Brooks Range collision, John, if you talk to Karin, we know the fixed location of that trench for a long time. We know the latitude of those trenches. I don't have the number for you. Patrick, does the flood basalts that underpin the Bonanza Arc and the Talkeetna Arc have similar chemistry to the Kanaokial FBs, or do they have a higher silica content like the CRBs? I don't know the Kanaokials, if I'm even reading that correctly. I do need to make sure that I'm understanding correctly that Mike Eddy's group sees the flood basalts as not being generated by a mantle plume, or they are. Simon, Nick, when the Peace of Baltica arrived and closed the Anguiuchum Ocean, how did it meet North America on its east side? Is the Porcupine Fault also a suture of some sort? Simon, I think what you're asking is, okay, you have the arc continent collision to make the Brooks Range, and then you have North America hitting it from the side. It's like another Buick. I think in one of those clips, Karin called it a mega Buick or something. And so is there a suture at the Porcupine? Creative question. I don't know. Last question from Koshkanon Jim. Is there a pre-170 million year old story of what the Talkeetna Arc magmas intruded into were the host rocks of a continental fragment with the exotic zircon story from earlier in the series? We'll finish with maybe the best thing that I had for you today, which is this evil twin story. And if we know, and I think in Brandon's video clip that I think did work for you today, I think Brandon is saying we are able to understand more about the basement of the Talkeetna Arc by learning what people have learned in British Columbia about the basement of the Vancouver Island story. And so looking for these parallels, even though much of these older things are fragmentary, apparently hardly any basement of the Talkeetna Arc has been seen. And is this all true oceanic island arc, or are there some pieces of North American bedrock? Is there North American craton that is beneath this volcanic arc? Are we doing Bob Hildebrand's rifting away and then coming back and then rifting away and coming back? And does that suddenly get us to Quinellia and Stikenia? The emotions are all over the place, including frustration with the technology today, but the general emotions of trying to synthesize this sometimes doesn't feel that tall an order. Right now, as I'm looking at you, it seems like a huge order. Like, I don't know if 6 letters from now, 5 letters are going to be enough. But I'm doing a recorded Zoom interview with Mitch Mahalanik on Sunday afternoon. And I'm hoping that that conversation with Mitch, involving many of these older Jurassic stories, will give us just as much to work with as Karin Siglock's interview a week and a half ago. A toast to you. Here's to you for making it to the end, 4:30 local time, Pacific time in Ellensburg, Washington. Here's to you. Here's to the health of your family and your friends, whether you're enjoying balmy weather or frigid weather. I hope that you're in touch with everyone that you love. And I hope that we continue to support each other and enrich the communities that we enjoy. Give you one more look at outside. 4:30, not bad. Still have some light in the sky. And one more time, a special invitation for those of you that want to work directly with the experts of different points of view. And maybe Bob Hildebrand will be with us by text as well. So we may have all 3 books represented, all 3 authors represented. And if we're all over the place and there's no common ground, that's okay. But we're modeling positive, inclusive, curious discussion. Saturday morning will be that. Thank you, everybody. I love you, and goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. See you Saturday. Shelf cam. Window cam.